Hey, good morning. Welcome to Morning Brew with Pastor Drew. I'm Drew McComb, the pastor here at the famous Little Brown Church in Nashua, Iowa, also of St. John's at Pleasant Hill and Compass Outreach Centre, all in and around Nashua. Thanks for tuning in. We're on every weekday morning from 8 a.m. for about 5 or 10 minutes, so it's a very easy listen to. All you need is your Bible, whatever version you choose, an open heart and mind to hear the word of the Lord. And, of course, it's called Morning Brew for a reason, so whatever your morning brew is, and I'm going to have a sip of my coffee here, so excuse me. Lovely. Thank you so much, those of you who followed for the last 3 weeks through the long series we did on knowing God and understanding the voice of God. This week we're going to go in a different direction. I have a number of heroes in my life, people that I've always looked up to. Three in particular. Now, I'm not counting the Lord because He's my ultimate hero, of course. But there are three in particular. One is my dad, Andy McComb. Andy was just a regular, hard-working, blue-collar guy. He went to work on a farm when he was 14. After that, he worked for 46 years in the same job in the railway. And a more faithful man you couldn't find. Faithful to the Lord, faithful to his wife, faithful to me, faithful to his church. He was a wonderful servant of God in his church. Faithful to his friends. He was a man you could trust. He was a guy that always finished what he started, always said what he meant. He was a dependable man. Second person that I hold as a hero is Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II. Remarkable man. If you study his story, his upbringing, the things he faced, the adversities that went through, and he was the man that would inspire an entire nation to never surrender, never give up, keep on going, no matter what was happening. The might of Nazi Germany was being thrown at the British people, and he said, don't give up, keep on, keeping on. That was Winston Churchill. And so both of those men lived through what we know as the greatest generation. Tom Brokaw wrote about that many years ago. And I've met so many men and women from that generation that I admire so much, who learned a lot through the Great Depression and through World War II and learned to live with not much at times. And we're happy with that, and we're content, and we're faithful people. Third person that is one of my heroes is the Apostle Paul. I think after meeting Jesus, after meeting Mom and Dad in heaven, the next person I want to meet probably is the Apostle Paul. We got a lot to talk about. There's a lot of things I want to ask him about theology, what he really meant when he wrote some of the things that he wrote. Paul, I wish you could have been a bit clearer about this whole thing about the sovereignty of God or the free will of man and all these other things that we ponder over. But he was an amazing man. He was a hard-working guy. From that moment that Jesus laid hands on him on the road to Damascus and turned him inside out and upside down and made an apostle, especially to the Gentiles. He was he just never quit. He just kept on, keeping on. And all the things that he went through that we're going to look at this week, just amazing. Imprisonments, beatings, abandonment, shipwrecks, you name it, he experienced it, and yet he kept on keeping on. When someone says their final words, it tends to be really important. People tend to listen. And so I want to ask you this question. If you knew that you were going to leave this world, by tomorrow morning you gathered your family and friends around, what would you say to them? What kind of words would you share? Would they be words of encouragement, words of warning, words of advice, direction, words of love? Or would it be all of the above and then some? The last words that people say are extremely important. Last words of Julius Caesar as he was being stabbed in the Senate, assassinated, and even his friend Brutus was part of the assassination group, looks around and looks at his friend and says in Latin, et tu, Brute, and you, also you, Brutus. There can be words of wisdom. G.K. Chesterton, the famous English philosopher and writer, his last words were, the issue is clear now. It's between darkness and light, and everyone must choose. Or just words of peace and joy. Apparently, George Washington's final words were, "'Tis well." That would be kind of nice for us to be able to say, "It is well with our soul. And that man that I said was one of my heroes, Winston Churchill, inspired the British people through the wartime by saying things like this: never give up, for that is just the place and time your tide will turn. He said, you can't beat the person who never gives up. Just think about that. You can't beat the person who won't give up. And lastly, he said, there's no failure except in no longer trying. And these were words among many others, fighting them on the beaches and the hillsides and all that, that inspired a whole nation. Words are incredibly powerful. I'm saying all of that to say this. For this week, we're going to study the second chapter of the book of Timothy. In 2 Timothy 2 are Paul's last recorded words as he writes from a Roman prison cell to his young disciple, his young pastoral friend in Ephesus, someone who is mentored and trained and brought into the ministry. These are his last words to this young man in Ephesus as he writes, knowing that shortly he's going to give his life for the preaching of the gospel. And so I think it's important that we understand what Paul is communicating in these last words. And if I was to sum it all up, I guess it would be this: Timothy, don't give up. Keep on going. I'd like for you, if you will, to study 2 Timothy, the entire book. It's not long, it's only a few chapters. And I really would encourage you to read that for yourself as we study through this week to find out how important these words were to Timothy. Son, don't give up. And at this time in our nation, when everything seems to be unraveling, when it's becoming more and more difficult, I believe, to be a Christian, and it will probably get even more difficult, I believe the Lord wants us to hear what Paul had to say to Timothy, and he's still saying to us today, and that is, don't give up. Keep on, keeping on. By God's grace, we'll see you again tomorrow, and we'll take this on a little bit further. Happy studying. Get your Bible out and read through 2 Timothy. God bless you, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.